Today we've got two pieces of equipment to look at, and they're both on the desk in front of me. In fact, they look very similar. They're these two little boxes here. They are from a company called Dillinger Labs. The technology that's inside these is called SCAR Pro, and they are a transmitter and a receiver that are designed to send high quality, low latency audio across a space up to 50 meters indoors. So the idea of these is that you can plug something into the transmitter. In this case, I've got a DJ controller plugged into the transmitter, and it will send that to the receiver, very high quality, and then let you push that back into a speaker or headphones or whatever. But in the case of a DJ, it's probably going to be a speaker, because in the case of a DJ, you're going to use these to plug your DJ gear into the transmitter and then send it to some speakers that are a long way away from where you're DJing, and therefore that you, for whatever reason, don't want to run a cable there. So the transmitter unit is called a Dani, and the receiver unit is called a Streetheart. Dani and Streetheart are the name of these two bits of gear kit. They're about $250 each from Dillinger Labs. And so we've been testing them. In this review, I'm going to tell you about what we think about them from a DJ's point of view. There's also a written review as well, which you can find the link for underneath if you want to find out more and get all the links and so on. So let's get started by talking through what these do. And we'll start off by looking at the transmitter. So the transmitter is the one that's called Dani. It's got a T on it to tell you it's the transmitter. And this is where you plug in your audio. Now, all the audio sockets on these are 1/4 inch balanced TRS, and some of them are combi TRS and TS sockets to give you flexibility. So if you use XLR sockets on the back of your equipment, then you're going to need a lead which converts into a balanced TRS input, but these leads are easy to come by, and the company themselves sell them. You can see why they've done that, to keep the units quite small, because if they had big XLR connectors on the back, then the unit itself would get a little bit bigger. So they're plugged in here. This is the transmitter, which has got a through. So this means that if you've got speakers nearby, which I'm going to suggest you probably will want, that are normal wired, i.e. not using wireless, you plug those into here and it's just like a through. It's literally hardwired internally between these places. So these are in order to let you have wired and wireless in the same setup. So you plug that in there, and then you've got a few switches. You've got a pro audio or consumer audio level switch, and then you've got a couple of attenuators that can attenuate by 6 or 12 decibels, just to start tidying up the audio as it goes into the transmitter device here. Now, there's a little light there that shows you when you've got a signal, and on the other side of the unit, we've got our various bits and pieces for controlling it. So you've got your on-off switch, you've got your battery level there. The batteries last for 14 hours, which is a nice long level. You're never going to need more than that in most uses, I would guess. You've also got a volume control here, which is literally a volume input, but this also doubles up as a mute control, and there's various other things you can do with that as well. And then the on-off light, which is currently lit red, it looks a bit orange here, but it's lit red, is telling you that we're connected in the pro mode to the receiver. There's two modes for audio here, pro and normal. The normal is 38 milliseconds and the pro is 19 milliseconds latency. You're definitely going to want to use pro, but that does limit the number of items that you can have receiving, so it's limited to 2 as opposed to 4, which again is not going to be an issue for you. Aerial here, which you always want to have pointing upwards when you're transmitting, and then big feet on the bottom. Just a solid metal case, very well built unit. So that's the transmitter. As far as the receiver goes, it's got a big R on it to tell you it's a receiver. So here we've got the confirmation we're receiving something. The receiver is quite clever because it's got outputs which can be configured in a few ways. So you've basically got a left and right at the top stereo output and a left and right at the bottom output, so therefore each of them is a mono, and they together make up a stereo. The ones at the top can have all kinds of things plugged into them, balanced, unbalanced. You can press a little button and turn them into 2 headphone sockets. There's a split button, so if you've got 2 completely different feeds coming down these, you can have 2 headphones listening in mono to 2 completely different things. And you've also got The ones at the bottom, which is just very normal, they're just balanced outputs. The ones at the top can also have unbalanced outputs plugged into them as well if you're plugging into RCAs or something. So a lot of flexibility with the way you plug stuff in there. And this side is exactly the same as the other one. So we've got the on-off and the level for the battery and so on. So the idea of these is that you basically plug them in and you pair them with each other by pressing the pair button. There's loads of ways you can pair these. They've got pages in the manual about, you press 6 times and then you press the other one 4 times and stuff, which might sound a bit like overkill, but actually the way we're talking about these here is just for simple DJ use. You've got a DJ controller or a DJ box. There's some speakers a long way away. You don't want to run an XLR cable because it's not practical. You're on a beach or something, DJing back to the main PA system in the in the beach bar or whatever. You just want a wireless link, right? That's how we're talking about them. So we're literally plugging stereo in, taking stereo out. In this instance, actually, I'm taking mono out because I've only got one speaker set up here to test these with. I've got one of a pair of PA speakers here, so I've just taken one output from this unit. But normally you'd have 2 outputs going on from this unit here to plug into your speaker. And so that's the way I've got this set up, but there is lots of ways of setting them up differently for different things. Like you might want to use them in a big pro studio where you've got a different headphones mix going out for the vocalist to someone else and all this kind of stuff. So there's various ways that these can be set up. The way we're testing them is like this. So how are they? How do they work? Well, we tested them by putting them into a normal DJ setup and just replacing the cable we'd normally run from this unit here into the speaker with these. So there's 2 things we're really testing here. We're testing the latency and we're testing the audio quality. So to test the audio quality, I basically plug my headphones into this one here, my favorite headphones that I know what they sound like and listen to them, and I can happily tell you the audio quality is absolutely spot on. No problems with that. It's going to sound great. Latency, which is a way of describing the time it takes for the signal to get all through this system and turn up at your speakers, is 19 milliseconds, they say. So basically, in my headphones, I'm monitoring the audio directly out of the DJ controller, which has got a bit of latency because there's latency introduced by the DJ software that's running over on the laptop, but not very much. And then what's coming out the speaker is what is now including the latency from these units. And it's quite close. I can actually hear the difference. I can hear that the headphones are a little bit ahead of what's coming out of the speaker. As DJs, we're very, very attuned to this kind of thing because we're used to manual beat mixing, and manual beat mixing requires that our speakers are bang on. And there is noticeable latency. I don't know how much in truth is coming through there, but I can notice the latency in that. It's not very much. Now, if you switch the units through to the non-pro mode, it's totally noticeable, double the latency, and you can notice it. This way, it's not very much. At a push, I could DJ with just the output coming from there. I could manually beat mix with just the output coming from my speakers here, running through that system. I'd rather not. I'd rather have a speaker hardwired into the mixer here for my monitor speaker because I can hear the difference and it's just slightly annoying. But it's possible. The latency is small enough for you to be able to do that. You'd certainly know it if you were scratching or finger drumming or whatever. There is a noticeable latency, but as I say, it's small. If these speakers were on the dance floor pointing away from me and I had a monitor speaker here, fine. It's close enough for that not to matter. And as soon as you move speakers away from you, there's a delay anyway, whether the signal's getting to them instantaneously or not. So, it stops being a worry at that kind of a stage. So if you're setting up, if you're thinking of buying something like this and like going totally wireless, that'll work. But you will notice it a little bit, especially if you're used to manual beat mixing. However, all that said, if you're going to use these to put, like say you're a mobile DJ and you want to set up your speakers, you've got 2 pairs of speakers. You've got one pair that are near you and one pair that are a long way away. You can use the through on this unit to put the speakers that are near you direct wired in, and then the ones that are far away can use the SCAR, and then that way you get the audio going to the other side of the dance floor without you having to run those cables, and the speakers that are near you could double up as your monitor speakers if you wanted because they're wired properly. So that's one way that you might use this. Another way you might use this is with the kind of speakers that have got the SCAR technology built in. So actually over here I've got one of them because we reviewed it quite recently. And there's a company called Soundbox that make these speakers here. This is a Soundbox Go, which is small enough for me to pick up. The Soundbox 3, which are just out of shot, are too big for me to pick up and stay fashionable on a live recorded review. These have got the equivalent of one of these transmitters, receivers and transmitters built into them. So not only can you receive audio that's sent from one of these directly into those speakers, but those speakers can then link to each other. And that's really cool, because that means that if you were using something like the little Denon DJ Prime Go unit, you could actually, notwithstanding the fact you're going to get a little bit of noticeable latency, even at 19 milliseconds, you could have a battery-powered DJ unit with battery-powered speakers and no cables linking them. So you could set up at a pool or outdoors or on the beach and not have any cables anywhere, which is quite a compelling idea. And also, if you've got the speakers that have got these built in, again, they're by a company called Soundbox, you could add a subwoofer easily by getting one of the receivers and then plugging this into a wired subwoofer. And therefore you could have a 2.1 audio system running totally wirelessly apart from the subwoofer, which is made wireless by one of these, because that company don't make subwoofers basically. So there's lots of ways of using these as a DJ. Would I recommend them? Certainly. If you have got a compelling need to run audio across a reasonably large a leap, and you want something that not only can do that, but it's got all kinds of other configurations as well for doing all kinds of things. In other words, in the future, if you also want to run audio at distance, but you want to be doing it in a studio environment, or to give someone a pair of headphones to monitor something, this can do all of that. So you're going to get something that you're not going to outgrow. I really like the fact that the 14-hour lithium batteries charged by USB-C and are replaceable. So like 5 years down the line, if your battery dies, you can just unscrew it and replace it with another one, which is nice. It's nice to see that they've thought that through. So if that's something you want, I have yet to see a better way of doing it than this. If you just want something like wireless headphones, because you're like, hey, wireless headphones look cool, I don't need to have a cable between my DJ controller and that, I can jump into the crowd with my headphones on or whatever, I wouldn't recommend using this. They do make headphones that you can use, they're called Helix, that work with these transmitters, but I think the latency is a bit high, to be honest. You can get a set of headphones by a company called III, which advertise only slightly lower latency than this, but I didn't notice it as much. So, and they've also got a nice little transmitter which fits into your headphone socket, and it's only about this big as opposed to these big things. So if you want very low latency headphones without the cable for DJing with, I'd say take a look at the III W Plus wireless system on their TMA variant headphones that use that. But if you want to wire speakers up wirelessly, there's no Bluetooth, there's no Wi-Fi, there's none of that stuff. This is run off a proprietary system called Scar Pro, the Dillinger Pro Dani transmitter, and Streetheart, I have to keep checking myself when I say that to get it right, receiver at $250 each. Are going to last you a lifetime, and they're going to do the job, and they're probably the lowest latency you'll get in this kind of system, albeit slightly noticeable, especially if you're a DJ, and double so if you're a DJ that likes manual beat mixing, because we notice that stuff instantly. So there you go, that's the Digital DJ Tips overview of these units. We've got a full written review over on the website, so do take a look at that. Underneath you'll see a link to that. If you've enjoyed this and you'd like to know more about learning to DJ with Digital DJ Tips, your first step is to go and join for free, where you get a free copy of our book, Rock the Dance Floor, a free copy of our gear guide, but more importantly, we'll send you our weekly training email, which is totally free, and it's got lessons, tutorials, mixes, and so on to help you improve as a DJ. And if you like what you see, we've got 26 DJ courses as well, from names like Jazzy Jeff, James Hype, Laidback Luke, DJ Angelo, and many more. But meanwhile, from me here in the studio, I hope you've enjoyed this review. Get good, get out there, make the moments, and we'll see you again very soon.